Welcome to the episode of Just One More Fix. This is James. With me in this episode is Lacey.
Hey.
You can find us online at justonemorefix.com or on Twitter at justonemorefix. If you like us, you can support us at Patreon, and you can give us a rating and review at iTunes or wherever you find us at. In this episode, we're going to GameStorm Villages. And now, it's time to get our gaming fix.
I'm Willie D. Nelson from All Things Good and Nerdy, a pop culture podcast, part of the Gonna Geek Network. Just like the show you're checking out now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other tantalizingly geeky shows at GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
Welcome to another episode of Just One More Fix. Couple quick announcements before we get things started today. May 5th from 12 to 4, I'm going to be running Degenesis at Game in Terre Haute on South 7th. So if you want to come out and have some awesome post-apocalypse gaming in the world of Degenesis and experience some terribleness that is the world of Degenesis, come on out and have a good time with us because it should be a lot of fun. I said Degenesis way too many times in that little bit there.
Degenesis.
So, right on. You may have also noticed that we didn't have a Night Witches episode last Friday. That's because we ran out of upload space in terms of the amount we can upload in 1 month. So we had to miss an upload for Night Witches, but that'll be coming out this Friday, and yeah, it should be awesome. You also may have noticed that episode 19 kind of popped up out of order for some reason. So I'm not sure entirely what happened, but there was some kind of a glitch in the upload process and it was hanging out in like the queue, but didn't actually release for some reason. So the webpage published and all that kind of stuff, but the episode never actually came out. So it's there.
Ooh, it's like our mystery episode.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure how it happened, and I hope it doesn't mess things up too much for people. But just so you know, that is the correct episode 19. It's actually numbered correctly, and it should follow in the order that it is actually numbered. It's just
like for Night Witches, you mean?
Yeah, it's just the release date's got a little wonky for some reason. I don't know. I'm not sure what button I did or did not click, but it didn't work right. And I just happened to notice it, and it's fixed now. So
like listening in order, and you're like, wait a second, I've clearly missed something.
Right. So, but it is out, and there will be another Night Witches episode out this coming Friday. Our next thing is production, and all of it is done for Worms, our first of our quarterly zines. So super happy and satisfied with that. The production was really good on it. I'm really happy with the way the prints came out. The PDF is currently up on our Patreon. Right now. So if you are a Patreon supporter or you would like to get access to it and help support our show and the other products that we're going to start putting out, you can go to patreon.com/justonemorefix and get a look at what we have going on there. So if you are a supporter and you're set up at the tier to get a print copy of it, which I believe is a $5 tier, make sure you guys have your address entered in there so we can get those in the mail to you and sent out. So we printed out 100 of them for our very first quarterly zine. So yeah, should be a good time. I have them all numbered and they're all ready to go and get sent out, and it's going to be wicked cool.
It'll be on sale at a gaming store near us.
Near Terre Haute, right? Yeah. So, but we're going to take them to conventions and that kind of stuff as well, and try and get them out there as much as we can. And yeah, so super happy. Really, really big thank you to a lot of different people out there that sort of encouraged us to make that happen. So all the times we sat down with Kyle Chenier, he was, pretty adamant about just go do it. And I know he wasn't speaking like directly to us, but I had this idea kind of rolling around the back of my head. So big thank you to Kyle. You'll probably hear that again. So you'll probably hear us thank him again in person or whatever. Along with that, there's lots of other designers that we've talked to that I just were really, really kind of encouraging to sort of like find your own voice, do your own thing, and make it happen and put it out there. Yeah, so, and then obviously Lacey for sort of helping me sharpen an idea that you guys heard on episode 59. I've been saying it's like 54 for a while, but it's actually episode 59, Creature Feature. And I only know that because I typed it in the little box when I did the layout for it. So I guess I shared it quite a bit on several OSR forums and that kind of stuff, and being like, not in a way like, hey, come get this from me or come buy this, but like more in a way that to like motivate people and inspire people, because it was a really cool process and anyone can do it. It's not that hard. If you can work a word processor, software, you can definitely make a zine. It's way easier than what you probably think it is. And at a certain point, it did seem kind of like it was a bigger project than what it was. And I mean, it was a big project, 3 months of pretty consistent work here and there at it, on the side. I just think that as much as we tell people to go out and run games and all that kind of stuff, I think at the same time, go out and make something, put it out there. There's never,
you want to.
Yeah, there's never been a better time to do it. You know what I mean? For access to drive-through or itch.io or whatever. So I just know there's a lot of people that have that sort of rolling around in the back of their head that I kind of want to do this. I kind of want to do it. But then they never actually sort of take those steps. You know what I'm saying? So if you think you might, definitely go do it. But if it's not something you're interested in, then, don't. It's sort of like the wishy-washy is the answer of all time.
Do the thing if you're motivated to do the thing.
Right. Or don't if you're not. Because, yeah. So we're in production for our second zine now, which will release in July. And we're lining out artists and cartographers. And I'm hunting down some more. Yeah, I know. Hunting
the best title.
I agree.
It's way better than publisher, editor, author, cartographer.
Illustrator, not as good. I'm also hunting down some more public domain art because I'm a big fan of sort of, masters of artwork that I just think are cool and inspiring, and being able to use those in different ways to sort of, one, maybe point out some awesome classic artwork, and then also, they're masters, so why not use them, right? So we're in production for that, and it's going to be called the Hastings Party. And if you like worms or the idea of sort of terrible horror,
the creature.
So if you sort of like our flavor of things and our flavor of horror, it's going to be another sort of investigative horror adventure style thing in that OSR D&D kind of vein again. So, but more updates to come in on that. And I think that we're going to do, I think that I may be doing sort of a blog posts along with it, with the design cycle of it to sort of, bring light to what it takes to put one of these together. Alrighty. So we're going to jump right into this today. So this is going to be our second time game storming. And in the process of putting this second zine together, I kind of realized a hang up that I had to try and overcome. So several episodes ago, we talked about how we lay out our cities for World of Darkness games. And what I realized is that when you lay out those games for World of Darkness, it's like one individual that has an agenda and something that they want to accomplish and how they go about doing it. Now, in this case, we're going to talk about a village and the families that exist there. And in sort of a medieval fantasy kind of a world, right? I realized putting this kind of a thing together is significantly different than doing it the way I do with vampire stuff. So I thought it might be fun to just sort of sit down and talk this through and see what we end up with. And hopefully, obviously, if you make adventures or sort of plan, do prep work for your games, you send people through villages at some point. That's sort of what we do. So hopefully this will give you some insight maybe into how we do it and some of the struggles that we have and things we have to overcome. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is describe the town that this takes place in, right? So it's a small town, very small village, and it's in the high mountains, and it's sort of isolated, and it is, the conditions there are harsh. Starvation is a very real reality. Dying to exposure is a very strong possibility as well. So yeah, I was thinking like it has, I'm not sure what winter crops would be, like cold weather crops, sort of like, I don't know, potatoes and barley or something. Is
barley a winter crop? I don't really know.
It is in my world. So I don't know. We'll have to do some research and look on that. But potatoes are though, right?
Mm-hmm. Any root vegetable. Really
Turnips
survives into the later season. Right. Your squashes and zucchinis are typically fall. Pumpkins. I mean, you have your garlic and onions, but those aren't really food
staples
per se.
Food, right?
They're definitely tasty, but one cannot live off garlic alone.
Oh, I disagree. In this case, with this village, there are also wolves and bears in the area. So there's a palisade, like a wooden palisade that's been built up around it, if that becomes relevant to anything, and it may not. But just so you kind of have an idea of this sort of isolated village in the high mountains with a wooden palisade sort of against the side of the mountain, basically.
I would like to strongly recommend an alpaca farm.
Alpacas?
Yeah. Everybody does goats. Alpacas are very hardy creatures. They live in the mountainous regions. You can use their wool. Or, I don't know, do you call it fur? I don't really know. Anyways, but you can use it to make all kinds of warm clothing. A C.
A C. I put a C. Very good. Mm-hmm. My alpaca spelling is on point today.
Just throwing it out there.
First time ever. I just want everyone to realize that's the first time ever.
They don't get enough love. Everybody thinks goats or llamas. Alpacas.
Are alpacas bigger than llamas?
I think they're really the same size. Honestly, I couldn't tell them apart if they were next to each other, but I know they're a different creature.
Okay. Right on. So alpacas it is. Look out. Okay, so root vegetables and alpacas, right?
Yeah.
Very good.
And beer.
And beer. Always beer. Okay, so what I have laid out so far is that there are 8 families in this village. 8 sort of like extended, like larger families. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so where I got hung up is I had an idea for this adventure, right? So one of these families is very clearly tied into the conspiracy that's happening, right? They sort of are one of the central hubs that everything revolves around, right? So they're very easy to develop and got that all figured out and they're no problem. Where I started to have a problem was all the other people that exist in the world in terms of not developing them as individuals, but developing them as like a family. So you could just sort of plug this family in and sort of pick and choose names to make whatever you wanted, right? I wanted to use these families to sort of give context, like a good amount of feeling and atmosphere to the world without being like, this is the potato farmer family and they farm potatoes and they like potatoes and their children look like potatoes and potato, right? You know, I have names for these families if you want me to go through them, or do you just want to like take it out of that context? I don't know, however you want to.
I don't care.
Okay. So the first family is the Hastings family, and they're the ones we don't need to detail because they are what this centers around, right? They're the Hastings Party is the name of the adventure.
But no, we do need to detail them because if we're going to make other families, I need to know what these families are not going to be. So, like, what does the Hastings family do? What kind of family are they? Is it a big family? Is it a small family?
So it is a mother and father with 7 children. The father is sort of the leader of the village, sort of both in a morale sense, but also in a like actual leader sense. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like, so the people that live here, generally speaking, respect him. He's the one that led them here. Mm-hmm. And I have this sort of Donner Party situation happening. It's sort of what's kind of going on is that they got led here. Now, at one point when they came here, it was prosperous, but times and weather have sort of changed, and now the conditions here are much harsher, but they can't exactly get down the mountain very easily, right? Mm-hmm. So that's sort of like the premise of what's happening. Okay, so then after them, they're sort of the ones that are maintaining the status quo, right? So after them, I have the Donner family, and they know something is wrong. They can't put their finger on exactly what it is, but they know something is wrong. And that's the only note that I have for them.
To give them a suspicion of -1. -2 being something is going down. These are just suspicious people.
Right. So if they're suspicious and know something is wrong, I kind of thought it would be good in terms of like an occupation for the family to have, that it should probably be something maybe not like the most important, but pretty important. Do you know what I'm saying?
Okay.
So do you know, like is being the smithy too obvious or not obvious? I don't even think that's obvious, but like.
Okay, well, maybe you should decide which professions you want there to be in this town first, and then you can divvy them up.
We need farmers.
Are you including the alpaca farmers in that, or are they considered ranchers?
I think that's probably what is farmers and ranchers. I don't know. If we need, to break it up, we can. Probably should, but
I'm writing them separately.
All right, so like a smithy, right? Blacksmith, like hunter forager, wilderness man kind of thing.
You should have some kind of doctor, even if it's somebody who's not like
an actual doctor,
formally trained. Right? Somebody for delivering cows and babies,
right? Okay,
or alpacas, veterinarian / midwife.
I take care of the living. So what are we calling that?
Right now, I'm just writing medical person.
Dr. Quinn, medicine woman.
Exactly.
You're right.
Frontier medicine.
Should we include carpenter in this and that kind of stuff, or should we not worry about that kind of thing?
I just wonder, like, in a place that small, a lot of things of that nature, I feel like, are going to be handled.
Yeah, by the individual, whatever you need.
Yeah. So, like, your smith may also be a furrier.
A tanner kind of a thing, right?
Maybe a butcher. Potentially, or because that's
I feel like that falls under in terms of when you're talking about like those small communities. I think that kind of goes along with being the hunter. They're probably going to clean and skin and all that kind of stuff, right? Well, if we've got these alpacas, we need weavers and you know what I'm saying?
Weaver / seamstress,
tailor. All right, so that would be 6. So we would need 1 more in theory. Because my thought is, obviously, if your family is the main farming family, obviously you need more farm hands than you probably have in your family. Mm-hmm. So there's lots of people that are, sort of pulled from different families to go help with that work. But when it comes to being in charge of that aspect of life, that's what this family does. That's where I was kind of coming at from this. Not that this is the blacksmith family and everyone here is a blacksmith and they only do smithy stuff. Does it make sense? Mm-hmm. So
then would you have someone who's like a trader? Like who takes woven fabrics from this town?
No, so they're isolated
to the next one.
No, so the premise is that they're isolated and they can't. Part of the premise of the adventure is they really can't get out. Travel isn't an option, right? Okay. So they're sort of like subsistence living right now. Is basically what it is.
Do you have some form of law in this town? I mean, is it even big enough for that, really?
I don't think it's really, I think that kind of would fall back to the Hastings family, and that's the leader, so he kind of would adjudicate those kind of problems.
Gotcha. I don't feel like it's not really big enough to have any kind of store either, because then you'd have to have some kind of trade or something to that effect. And then I kind of hesitate with a brewer even, because, again, it's small, and then, maybe if somebody had that occupation, they would also have something else as well. So maybe you have someone who's a farmer, but they farm and brew, they have whatever oats or hops or
because it's almost like small to be like commune style, because it's subsistence living, right? They're all working together just to survive, essentially.
Do you have somebody like a sawmill,
a mill, like lumber stuff?
Yeah, because
carpentry,
if you want to build anything. And there's trees in the mountains.
Mm-hmm. I had the idea of these turf houses like they have in Greenland and Iceland.
Like a sod house?
Yeah, where they put the dirt and the grass that grows on top of it. And because they do really well in those really cold areas like Iceland and Greenland, right? So
they still have tables and chairs in their house.
Yeah.
Wood in their fire. And
No, I think it makes sense. So we'll just call it like carpentry, just as a general thing. That includes all of that kind of,
a lumberjack. That's what it is. A lumberjack of all trades.
So this Donner family, who is highly suspicious and knows something is wrong. What is it that is their main trade as a family?
So, depending on what it is that's wrong, I'm going to lean one of two ways. So either a hunter or lumberjack person, because they're most likely to venture farthest from the town and be suspicious, or potentially a rancher, depending, somebody like that. Or if it's something that's more in the town that's unusual happening within, then I would lean toward
medicine
of the medical person, or potentially the smith.
I kind of like the idea of, I think I'm going to go with the carpentry lumberjack. Reason being is that, like you mentioned, they're going to go outside the palisade walls, right? Mm-hmm. But I feel like if they're the hunter outdoorsman style, they're more likely to just leave if things are really that bad, because they would have the skills to leave, right? So they have enough to go out, but not enough to just leave, right? So I think the people that have to be the hunters then have to be the people that are loyal to the Hastings, right? Like the most loyal group that's who they are. They're the hunters, right? And also, in a way, would be a way for them to sort of keep their grasp of power, because if you're a hunter, which means you're probably skilled with a bow or trapping or tracking, so you may have a good chance at having more survival skills than the average person, which means you can sort of lay the law down and keep order in a way. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. It's actually the Murphy family is going to be our outdoorsman hunter.
And their suspicion level is like a +2.
Yeah. So, we need to give a scale. So,
-2 to +2.
Right. But minus being suspicious and plus being not suspicious.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Till +2.
Sure.
Or is it neutral because they know the plan and they just don't care?
No, they don't know the plan.
Okay. So super trusting.
Yes. And the Donners we have in a -2, right?
-1. Are they supposed to be a 2?
Yeah, they should be a 2. They're highly suspicious.
-2.
They in fact know something is wrong, just not necessarily, they can't put their finger on it. You know what I'm saying? All right, so next I have the Graves. Mm-hmm. And they just want to be fat and happy.
Oh,
they're sort of like middle of the road. I don't know that they're suspicious. I think they could be either not suspicious and just not care, or maybe they could be like +1 on the suspicion scale and like they're not really paying attention. Things are not that bad right now. We just don't really care. We just want to be fat and happy.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I feel like this is probably like the weaver seamstress people of the world.
Okay. They stay inside where it's warm. People shear the alpacas and bring the fur to them. They get to see, yeah. Okay, right on. So you think they should be a 0 or should they be a +1 on suspicion?
Oh, I just kind of give them a 0.
I'm fine with a 0.
Neither here nor there.
Mm-hmm.
Or would a 0 be like, I've heard the rumors, but I'm not really buying into it?
Probably. So they should probably be a +1 then. +1. All right, so and then after that, I just have names for these families. Well, no, I guess I do have one more thing. I have the Reeds. And I based this off of actually the Donner Party. That's actually where these family names come from, okay? So the Reeds, they actually, when the Donner Party, they built cabins right after they settled, or not settled, after they got stuck, okay? So for those of you that don't know, the Donner Party is a group of people that went through a shortcut of a pass area in the winter.
It's called the Donner Pass.
No, it's called the Wasatch Pass.
Oh, okay.
I know that because I did all this reading this for this thing here. So as it turns out, it had snowed too much and they couldn't get through. So they were stuck. So they ended up cutting down trees and building cabins. Okay. So the Reed family didn't actually build their own cabin. They had a lean-to that was off the side of another family's cabin. So they just sort of, I have a note that they just sort of live off of the work of others.
Okay.
In a way. I don't know if that needs to stick or not.
So they don't have an occupation at all?
I think they have to necessarily do something. Maybe they're just sort of like whatever, like people can draft them to do, they do maybe. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because it struck me as odd that you would be a family, right? Mm-hmm. And you're going to, these people froze to death and starved to death. And you didn't build a cabin. You just made a lean-to off of somebody else's, and that's where you kept your family. It struck me as an odd choice. And I thought, well, that's got to mean something, right?
Maybe they had a profession that was like good in a city, but not good
here.
So maybe this was like a family and the primary breadwinner was a lawyer. Well, I don't need a lawyer when there's 8 of us frozen in the winter. What I do need is somebody to help me plow my field, so some kind of educator or like an accountant or something.
But I don't think
like
lawyer is the right one, because I think if they were a lawyer, they would sort of like argue their way into owning a home. There needs to be something a little more passive.
I don't know in a small group like this that you could really like, I just
feel like it implies a certain level of social competence. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, the fact that they were able to even convince someone to build them a lean-to on the side of their house is fairly,
True.
Or maybe it's a fatherless family. Maybe there's a mother and like a son who's older, but not really old enough to have been trained in anything.
Okay.
So
that could be
you have like maybe like an older woman who's like in her 50s, maybe, and she has a 11-year-old grandson or something.
I like that. And then we can put their suspicion at -1 because they're just sort of disgruntled and unhappy, right? So do they have any kind of skill, or is it just the fact that how are we framing that up?
Well, I think it's like you said, where they sort of do jobs for hire. So it's like this. It's a boy, basically. I mean, maybe he's 12 or something, 11 or 12. So he can do odd jobs. He's just not exceptionally strong, because he's still young. Mm-hmm. He's not been trained at anything, and the woman is just older, so she can do housework and stuff like that. But so can other wives, so she's kind of stuck. Or maybe she performs other jobs. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Right on. All right, so after that, I don't actually have notes for any of the families. So I have the Breen family. They're next.
Breen. So how about we make this our blacksmith?
And the Stanton family?
Oh, hold on. We have to give the blacksmith a suspicion. Or do you want to kind of see?
Let's come back
are you
around.
Wanting a net 0 for this?
Not necessarily. I think we need to have more loyal than suspicious. Okay. But we can come back around.
Okay, what's the next one? Sorry.
Stanton.
Let's make these our alpaca farmers.
All right. Alpacas. So I think the alpacas have to be inside the palisade because of the bears and wolves that will devour them. But it doesn't necessarily take a ton of space. You know what I'm saying? And then we have the Kesseberg family. And they're going to be our farmers, right?
We don't have our medical person.
So I think the alpaca people should just function that way. They take care of the animals. They also take care of the people. Does it make sense? Like, it stands to reason. I think it's a situation maybe where if there was a doctor, they're not there now, and they just sort of fell into it because they've birthed alpacas and done that kind of stuff. They've maybe developed a few skills because they had to on people, but they're not by any stretch of the means a physician or something like that.
I put frontier nurse is actually the direction I went.
Yeah, right on. All right, so we have occupations and a couple levels of suspicion. So one of the things that you mentioned was family style and then scarcity and abundance, or scarcity or abundance, I guess.
Well, we should finish assigning suspicions because we have all the families now. And there's only 3 of them without suspicion assigned. So
Okay.
So the Donners with -2, Graves with +1, Murphy with +1, and Reeds with -1. That leaves our Smith, our farmers.
So I think if you are actively farming or raising livestock, like, that's a lot of work, especially in a terrible climate and a bad area. I think you probably have to be kind of loyal to what's happening in order to maintain that level of work.
Okay.
And, staying after it, because that stuff is, hard work, especially in an era of no combines and stuff plowing by alpaca and whatnot. So
I didn't say there couldn't be like 1 or 2 horses.
I just like the idea of all alpacas.
This town is alpaca powered.
Right. So I think maybe we'll just put them both at +1. And then our Breen family, the blacksmith, I think we'll put them at a 0 maybe.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, so do you want to do style of family and then scarcity or abundance next? All right, so the Donners, they're carpenters and lumberjacks, right? So as far as style of family, I think it probably has to be a big family, right? A lot of work to do. You got to go out, you got to chop the trees, you got to bring them down, you got to bring them in, you got to mill them down. I feel like it's a fairly large enterprise, right?
Mm-hmm. So do you want to make this like a multi-generational family?
I think so.
So then maybe we have like the father, so to speak, who's really, I guess, would be like the grandfather, but he's not like, he's still of an age where he can do manual labor, right? And then he has sons that are helping him do this. So how many sons does he have?
Let's do 3.
And daughters? Or does he only have sons? That would be kind of funny. Guy only has sons.
That happens. It's like, that's all boys.
Like, okay.
Right. And he'll have a wife as well.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like at least 2 of these sons should have wives as well. And maybe the youngest one isn't like quite married off yet.
Right on.
Or the oldest son maybe had a wife who's passed due to the weather or, childbirth or any number of terrible things that happen to people. 3 sons. Let's say grandchildren wise, we've got, what do you think? 10, 12, 8, 5.
So there's 2 sons that are married, so let's do 5. A 3 and a 2.
And 5
that are living or whatever. Do you know what I'm saying? Like living, viable children. Right on. So what do they have in abundance or scarcity?
Sons. Able-bodied family members.
Yeah, right on. Maybe that, workforce. They're the staffing solution for the village. So do they have a scarcity then?
I feel like it makes sense that they would have a scarcity of food. That's a lot of mouths to feed.
Yeah, it's true.
They're not hunters or farmers. I mean, I'm sure they could trade without, with wood, but...
Right.
Sorry, farmer scarcity. Farmers, no, scarcity food. So they have to figure out a way to feed all those mouths.
Right. All right, so the Murphy family?
Or if you want, you could do a scarcity of space. Like, they have the same size house, but, like, everybody's packed into this little
I like
place.
that better. Okay. I think because, like, we talked about...
builds, like, this tension and, like... Yeah. Desire for going out into the world and getting into mischief.
Also, if they're all living... like, there's no reason they wouldn't be sharing labor and food and all that kind of stuff because it is subsistence living, right? So...
Personal space.
Right. All right, so the Murphy family now. So these are the outdoors and hunters people. They're loyal to the power structure of the city or village, rather, whatever. I think I like this one as another multi-generational thing. Or not? Well, we're going to end up being that way, everything the way down. Then, if that's the case,
can we just make this like one, just kind of elderly couple? By elderly, I mean like 50. And then, like, he's a hunter and, like, she forages for stuff and they just, like, trade. Or maybe she has like a little herb garden and she goes out and finds mushrooms or something.
Yeah, it's fine.
Like they're this cute little like old couple that like just loves the nature.
All right, so what do they have in abundance? Time.
Food.
Food. Yeah, right on.
There are only 2 of them. They're good at their job.
And what is their scarcity? I think legacy might be an easy one to go with, but I don't know like that's going to come into play in the game. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, I feel like it could, though. Like, you know, trying to take somebody else under your wing, or like maybe they grow attached to someone and that creates friction.
All right, so the Graves, they are our weavers that just want to be fat and happy.
So do you think just like a typical like nuclear kind of family?
Yeah. Maybe a little bit on the older side, but not to where the sons and daughters are like grown enough to be establishing their own families yet.
So let's see, we've got mother, father. Let's go with 2 daughters and 1 son.
Okay. And what do they have in abundance?
Well, they want to be fat and happy, so fat and happy people have alcohol. You also said they're indoors most of the time.
Right.
Like,
so this is our brewer then.
I think they do that too. Yeah,
Very
like on
good.
the side. You know, it's some homegrown moonshine situation.
Right. Well, obviously, like, you know, sturdy clothes and that kind of thing and mittens and coats and stuff are going to be needed more, but
that's boring. We already know they're weavers.
No. What I'm saying though is like that's their main what they do, but the alcohol thing just sort of comes along with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Alrighty, and the Breen family, our
they
blacks.
need a scarcity.
Oh, yeah, you're right. How about I don't know what the right motivation to make any kind of changes?
Okay.
Does that make sense? But like in a passive way, not like in an active. We don't want to change in a passive way. Like we're fine. We'll just keep doing what we're doing. You know what I mean?
Scarcity of motivation. Scarcity of upward mobility.
All right, so the Breen family, which is our blacksmith. I kind of like the, with what we do with the Murphys, maybe another older couple, but they've got like, no sons, right? So this sort of like grizzled old.
I like the idea of a widower instead.
Oh, okay.
So he does have children, but he has no wife.
No wife.
And so, you know, what's lacking for him is like some companionship, a woman's touch, as they say.
Yeah. So how many children does our blacksmith have?
Should it be an overwhelming amount or not very many so he's extra lonely? 9 kids. No wife.
Please help me.
Or just like 1.
Or none. Could be an option as well.
Yeah, we already kind of have an old couple with no kids, though.
That's true.
Although, if he had no kids, it seems like a natural match with our old grandmother and young boy duo. Just saying. Do you know what this town needs? A matchmaker.
Matchmaker.
Maybe that's what this old grandmother does.
I've got die types that are tied to the die drop for where these families live, so I got to make sure that I don't have like a D10 that the number is relevant to something with a person with no children. You know what I'm saying? So it's all good.
So I think, okay, let's make him like a really like sad case. So he has 1 daughter.
Okay.
But he had several children.
Okay.
And so like this is a family that was like affected by like measles or something like that. So like he lost his wife and also several children. So this is like his one remaining child who just happens to be a girl. Dang it, why couldn't you have been a boy? Women aren't cut out for blacksmithing.
So his scarcity then is family and happiness.
Serious happiness scarcity.
Boy, nothing is uplifting like the cold, desolate, frigid mountains and death by measles and exposure. So what does he have in abundance?
Or maybe it was exposure. I don't know.
Other than hate.
Wealth. That's what I'm going to go with. They had accumulated a fair amount of wealth, and he only has 1 kid now. And it's not like it's a son that's going to inherit. He's basically just to auction this one off. I mean.
Fair enough. All right, so the Reeds, they are our grandma and young young boy. I also kind of like the idea of there being several smaller children. So maybe we make him a little bit older. Maybe he's like 15, 16, right? And then there's several other smaller children underfoot.
Oh, the boy. I don't want to go much older than 15, though, because at that point, like, depending on the era, you're like a man.
Okay, so let's do 14 then.
Okay. And we have other children as well.
Yes.
And so let's say we have one who's 3, a 5, and a 6, and a 9. So you have this whole, like, 4 smaller children, 1 nearly grown, and an old woman crammed into this shanty on the side of someone's house.
Right.
And then I feel like there's a rumor, like, what happened to their mother? Is this
Right.
old woman their mother? Like, she says she's not. Do they all belong to this young boy? Like, whose kids are these? Where's their mother? No one really knows, but there's all kinds, like, rumors abound. There are like 12 different things circulating at any given time about the origin of these children.
Right. So what do they have in abundance and scarcity?
I think since like we've had some emotions as like abundance, I think that this family has love in abundance. Like this old grandmother she loves the shit out of these kids. Like
Right
she's like
She is like the grandma.
she's
of
like
everyone.
You know, like a fairy godmother
Right.
basically. Like maybe she
Right.
collected all these orphans or something, but she just
Well, and that works
really
well with
loves
her
those
thinking
kids.
that family having -1 suspicion as well, in that they think something is wrong. She knows, she just can feel it in her bones, maybe a little bit. You know, one of those things. I like the fairy godmother analogy. That's a good one. So what do they have in scarcity?
Everything else.
Okay. All things. All right. So the Kesselbergs, who are our potato farmers, do they have an abundance of Irish accents?
Are they really potato farmers specifically? Like,
Well, we said root vegetables, which is, potato.
it's also carrots and parsnips and beets and turnips and rutabagas and going to have to be a one-note farmer.
I know. I'm just joking.
They farm all the root vegetables
All the things, right? All right. So
in this rocky soil.
I think this is a big family, right? Because they're farmers. They just, have lots of kids to help in the fields and all
Makes
that
sense.
kind of stuff, right? So let's do another multi-generational maybe, right?
So I think it would be kind of cool for this one if they had like a 2 older couple. So like you have like
2 brothers maybe?
yeah, 2 brothers or 2 sisters, or a brother and a sister, and then like both of their families. You know
Right,
what I
yeah.
mean?
I like that. That's what I already did. What I already noted. And then just several children under them.
Are there either of their spouses still around?
I think so, yeah.
Both of them?
It's just a full-on house, like a hotel. You know what I'm saying?
And then they, like, how many children do they have?
Several. I don't know. I think,
Are we specifying?
I think if we can just say several and leave it at that, and whatever you need, that's what you have. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
So
So we have several children and grandchildren.
what do they have in abundance other than labor?
I think this is another family that has a fair amount of status in this town. I mean,
They provide the food.
yeah, they provide the food. They're a large family with not 1 but 2 people who are elders in the community. Or I guess 4 actually, since each one of them is married.
So I think it's status, but also the ability to get things done, right? Because living this way, it's hard. It's a lot of it is physical labor, right? So they are a family that because of their numbers, being used to farming and hard physical labor, that they get things done, and that's maybe where they derive their status from. So what do they have in scarcity?
I really want to say compassion. Like they work really hard and they're just like, well, I don't see why they're that like,
Oh yeah,
we're doing this. Why are you doing,
Right.
pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I don't care about your circumstances. They have not a lot of compassion.
right. And
for
also
others.
they do all the farming and all this labor, and they feel like,
their job is more important.
right, we do all the work anyway, So
They're
right
like
on.
the little red hen.
All right, and then our last one is the Stanton family. So there are alpaca farmers and medical-ish personnel.
Let's do another nuclear family because we only have
Yeah.
one of those.
So maybe like husband and wife and then 2 surviving children.
Or do you want like a what would be deemed at the time as an inappropriate? And do you want like a homosexual relationship at all? Because we could do that too, or some sister wives. This is a guy with 3 wives.
I like the idea of this. I just don't know which way to go because
You don't have to, because it does kind of change the the nature of things. But we don't have a non-traditional sort of family.
Right.
So
part of something that I kind of like the idea of doing is making it to where, like, in terms of like laying this out as an adventure, right? The potential exists in there where there are those, I don't know how to say it, like those situations are put there to where it's very easy to incorporate if you want that into your game. So I think that's probably what we do here with this situation, right? So maybe, well, do you want to do this as like 2 women that are these alpaca farmers? I think it makes more sense for the midwifery part of it to be a woman.
Oh, I didn't think about that. That's true.
So maybe we do 2 women that live here together.
Okay, I like that.
And then I think I want to have children involved in this. So maybe one of the women has children from a previous.
Or if it's a frontier nurse, I mean, there's always this possibility that someone died in childbirth.
Oh,
these
yeah.
are orphan children they're raising.
Oh, I like that even better.
Adopted.
Oh, man. And this can be our compassionate family, because I don't think we have anybody that has. Oh, no, we have
an
the
abundance
grandma.
of love with the grandmother.
Okay, so we have 2 women together that live here at this alpaca farm. And then they're going to have. I like the idea of this orphan. That's because it kind of changes things, right?
It's also kind of cool to have like them from a previous relationship, like this, like one of them has a past that is either was considered heterosexual at one time or was, potentially some kind of forced relationship that, and so but then you have the other one that's sort of always been lesbian or whatever. And now they're together. Either way is cool, I think. Or maybe it's both.
Yeah. No, I agree. Or I think you can frame it up. It's like leave it broad enough to where it can sort of suit whatever need or desire that you have in the moment. You know what I mean? That's kind of like the way I like to paint these, is that so that it's broad strokes so you can sort of easily adapt and
but
shift
either way,
things
we
around.
Have children.
Yeah. You know what? Why don't we do multiple orphans? And because this is a pretty terrible way to live, and maybe there were families here that have already died and they left children behind. And while our one family that is very grandmotherly, she's not in a position to be able to take all these children in, right? And these ones are, because they have a place to live, right? To keep more children or whatever. So maybe there's like a couple orphans or a couple 3 maybe.
Well, we gave Grandma like 5 and she lives in a lean-to. So do we want to take away some of her children?
No, I think we leave them there, but because there's no more room, right? That's why, she would love to take them in.
I'm just saying, like, why does this couple only get 2 and Granny's got 5 in her shanty over here?
Life is hard. That's why. I don't know. Stupid logic.
I just feel like we leave Granny with like 3 and then give these ladies like 4.
Okay, I can be cool with that. But all orphans, right?
Yeah.
To one degree or another. Maybe a couple of them are siblings or whatever, but we have an abundance and a scarcity for them. So what do you think?
I'm going to say there's an abundance of not what you would call status, but just general community support.
Okay.
Because they have, some medical knowledge. They've got the alpacas. They're also raising all of these orphans that aren't theirs. Mm-hmm. And everybody cares for the children, as it goes.
Especially if you don't have to take the burden on of it doing it.
Mm-hmm. Like nobody wants to see them freeze to death in the winter, but at the same time, you also don't want to put them in your house, God forbid.
Right. Yeah. All right, so what do they have in scarcity then? I kind of want to say like time or something, because like this is a lot of commitments. You've got 4 orphan children, an alpaca farm, and maintaining, to what degree you can, the physical health of everybody else in this village, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Scarcity of free time.
Like,
Not that, like most people in the period don't have free time, but these 2 are spread especially thin.
Right. So like if you ever encounter them, they are either doing something or on their way to something, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're never on their way from something. They're always on the way to the next thing, right? Right on. All right, so we're like almost at an hour right now. So I think this is probably a pretty good place to draw this to a close. I'm not sure. We may circle back around to this and sort of fill out some rumors and give a little more detail and context to some of these. But do you feel like that this is enough to build a village around and begin to really give like if you're going to have an adventure that takes place in a village, right? You have to sort of have the larger moving parts of it put together. Do you feel like there's enough here to be able to do that with?
I think so, because I think deciding this, like setting the actual suspicion for what's going on in the scenario gives you an idea about how the family is and how involved they're going to be. And then also giving them the abundance and the scarcity creates motivation for them when they're interacting both with each other and with players that you're introducing in. But like, are you like, it's your game? Are you happy with it? Is there anything you feel like is missing from this?
I'm sure there probably is, but I think it's one of these things where I need this to get it to the table. And then once it plays, then I can see, I have these things listed, but this is something else I need. And then oftentimes I'm a very improvisational GM. So then I just sort of slip it in wherever it needs to be or whatever detail I need, and then just add it, make a note, and then I'm still off the races.
I think rumors are cool.
That's the next thing that I was actually...
You said something about it, and I like the idea of like, you know, kind of the carousing tables that they have that provide different rumors for things. But I also like the idea of approaching it like a vampire clan. So, like, this is the Murphy family, and here is what they think about these families. And, you know, here is what the Graves family thinks about these other families. So I think it would be cool to do it that way as well.
Right on. I did that with in the Worm zine, one of the Ilsa Dines, the woman who is in the Fiery Worm Inn, she has a list of rumors. She's sort of like the town gossip or whatever, right? And so I really like that. It's just sort of in an economy of words kind of way for a zine. It gets a little cumbersome sometimes depending on how much space you have to work with or whatever. But I definitely like the idea of having just a list of general rumors that could be circulating around. And I feel like if you have a list of, say, 5 rumors, right? Depending on where the players encounter the rumor and who they find it from, you can put that one rumor through the lens of that family, and it could significantly change how they see it. Do they believe it? Do they believe it's just garbage? Right. You know, that kind of a thing. So right on. No, I'm very happy with this. I think it's a good starting base to go from, because that's the biggest problem I was having is I didn't know how to get this thing started. And sometimes I feel like when you're having trouble getting started to make these things, because it's not like making a faction, right? That's I didn't want to approach it that way. I wanted to make a family that has a purpose and does something.
I think another thing that could be fun that would take it from being just like the rumor mill at the tavern is cool for that particular setting, but in this family setting, it might be interesting to have a list of like minor offenses. Because that's the kind of thing that gets tallied in a small town. You know, like, the Donner family's grandson came over to my house one time and stole my carrots, you know, whatever it is, you know, like petty stuff that happens in small towns.
Right, exactly. Right on.
Grudges, minor grudges.
That's a better word for it than offenses. I'm writing my... Well, I like this, but I don't think I was going to use this giant thing to run this game. But this is too much of a disaster on this paper to be able to actually use in a game. So I have to get it put into my broad template thing or whatever for the zine. But it'll be good. Very cool. Well, I think we should probably close this one off here. I think hopefully you guys get something out of this. I don't know. It's an interesting way to sort of listen to how we sort of brainstorm and put our ideas together. I know sometimes it's hard to have someone to bounce ideas off of because a lot of times you're probably running games for people. Which makes it difficult to sort of sit down with someone and sort of combine your creative sensibilities. Because me and Lacey together, we sort of have very similar but very drastically different approaches. We have similar themes in terms of horror, but very different approaches in how we put our stories together. And I think when you have someone else to sort of bounce that off of, you can really sharpen some ideas down and get some really cool, I don't know, plots or different moments in games that you can come up with to really create some cool scenes. But it's not always easy to find a person to do that with because they're probably going to be sitting at your table as a player or vice versa. You're going to be sitting at their table as a player. So it's kind of hard to make that work. But if nothing else, you get to see how we sort of put things together here around our table and a little bit of a glimpse into the production of our sort of adventure and zine process. So yeah, I don't know that there's much else to say about that, but hopefully this wasn't a terribly awful experience for you. The other important thing that I think it notes mentioning is that sitting down with someone else to sort of put this together also takes it out of just your own creative sensibilities. So like there are things that I probably would have never occurred to me just because sometimes you get in a rhythm and you get to doing things and then next thing you know, you have a lot of very similar ideas and tone. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's always better to bounce ideas off of other people if you can. But gaming groups and whatnot, and that makes it kind of hard. So, all right. So quick Gonna Geek promo for Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. episode 268. Runaway Tsunami. The Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. director SP, Agent Haley, and Agent Lauren discuss the Runaways series' 8th episode, Tsunami, as well as the weekly Marvel news and listener feedback. The agents debrief on Tsunami as a text emergency word, the true status of Victor at the end of the episode, the Survival Tribunal entertainment, Amy's final hours, if the videos Alex decrypted are really lost, if all the Runaways have superpowers, and Lauren wants to touch Captain Marvel. So you can check them out. That is episode 268, Runaway Tsunami, on the Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. podcast. You can find them at GonnaGeekNetwork.com. I think that'll do it for us this week. If you like what we do here, you can support us at patreon.com/JustOneMoreFix and join our other awesome Patreon supporters like Alistair H., Tiziano Furlano, Simon McNair, Alan White, and the OG Todd Olson. If you guys have a kind of a strange way that you guys put your villages together or your sort of small towns, their families and that kind of stuff, drop us a line and let us know how you do it. I'm kind of curious to see, because this is something that I actually haven't done in this kind of a way before. Usually I leave big broad strokes and just sort of come up with NPC families on the fly. And I think it just never comes off quite as well as I want it to. So this is probably the better way to do it. So hopefully you got something out of this. And if you have a different technique that works better or worse or whatever, drop us a line and let us know. Otherwise, we will see you guys next week.
Thanks for listening. This has been an episode of Just One More Fix. Music has been provided by Kevin MacLeod. You can find him at Incompetech.com. You can support us at Patreon.com/JustOneMoreFix or follow us on Twitter at Just One More Fix.